research and provides technical support on blue economy-related topics to government decision makers, the private sector, and the public, both locally and abroad. At the request of diverse coastal stakeholders in 2019-20, Jen led a process to define the Rhode Island's blue or ocean economy and identify strategies and recommendations to ensure this sector continues to thrive. Thank you. This is the result of that, which she'll tell you a little bit more about, but this is fabulous. And truly was an inspiration for this series. Jen is the winner of Rhode Island Saltwater Anglers Annual Environmental Award in 2020, Peter Benchley's Ocean Award 2017, and a 2017 Graduate of Leadership Rhode Island. Congratulations. Jen also serves as URI's lead for developing and facilitating the Rhode Island Ocean Special Area Management Plan, which led to the siting of the first offshore wind farm in the United States. She has also played a leadership role in the development and implementation of plans for the siting of land-based renewable energy and a comprehensive management and marketing approach for Rhode Island's shellfish resources and blue economy. Jen has led national efforts to develop indicators, monitoring protocols, and modeling tools for improved social and environmental management of offshore renewable energy. Thank you for being here, Jen. Next, we have Dean Ben Greenstein. He is the Dean of the School of Social and Natural Sciences at Roger Williams University. He is a marine geologist, invertebrate paleontologist, and taught classes in geology, paleontology, and marine geology. Just being able to say those words is challenging, including a field course on San Salvador Island, Bahamas, over a 20-plus year career in undergraduate education, primarily at Cornell College in Mount Vernon, Iowa. Ben has conducted research on modern and Pleistocene fossil coral reefs in the tropics in the Bahamas, Florida, Caribbean, Great Barrier Reef, and Western Australia, including being the lead investigator on 2 10-day saturation diving missions using NOAA's Aquarius underwater laboratory stationed off Key Largo, Florida. As Dean, Ben can speak to the role of the university in the blue economy and, the scope of faculty and undergraduate student research in marine environments in Narragansett Bay. Welcome, Ben. Thank you. Last but not least, we have Julia Wyman, Director of Marine Affairs Institute and the Director of the Rhode Island Sea Grant Legal Program. Julia has extensive state and national ocean and coastal law and policy experience, and most recently served as Ocean and Environmental Counsel for Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. Prior to that, she served as the staff attorney at the Marine Affairs Institute and the policy analyst for the Coastal States Organization in Washington, D.C., an organization that represents the interests of the governors of 35 coastal states, commonwealths, and territories. Much of Ms. Wyman's work has focused on coastal adaptation to climate change. She serves as an adjunct faculty member at Roger Williams University School of Law, where she teaches courses related to ocean and coastal law and policy, including climate change law and policy, ocean management law and policy, and environmental justice. Julia will speak to the role of the law school and law student lawyer in the blue economy efforts in the state. Welcome, Julia. Okay, so I think what we'll do is just have each panelist say a few words about what they do, what their role is at their university, and then we'll go right into some Q&A. Okay? So,
oh, okay. All right.
Let's have it be organic. I mean, that's what's
Perfect.
best.
Okay. So, thanks for coming today. This is my first in-person event since last March, so I'm not sure how I'm going to do. So I'm Jen McCann, and I'm at the University of Rhode Island. But I grew up in Tiverton. So I'm not from Aquidneck Island, but I did look at it a lot growing up. And one of my first jobs at the Coastal Resources Center was to work on Aquidneck Island with the Aquidneck Island Land Trust and looking at the value of open space, the economic value of open space. And that led with Peter Merritt. And we also worked with the Aquidneck Island Planning Commission with Dr. Quigley and the Navy and the 3 municipalities to think about how can we look at Aquidneck Island as one island versus 4 communities, one being the Navy, as we move forward and develop. So part of what we did was worked with all of those entities, including the Chamber of Commerce, on the West Side Master Plan, which many of you may have been a part of. So I'm saying this one to, and then more recently during COVID, my son was swimming at the Boys and Girls Club in Newport every day, and so I had to drive him over, and all I did was walk around Newport. And because I had the time, and I would just go to all the different little neighborhoods of Newport. And I always thought I knew Newport, you know, I knew some of Newport, but just, it's such an amazing place. And clearly, it has its roots in the blue economy, and also even now, so embedded in the blue economy. Even just Innovate Newport is a component of the blue economy. So I just really enjoyed that time. Walking around Newport in the rain while my son was swimming. Anyway, so, and I'm telling that story because, I represent the University of Rhode Island. We are a public institution. And part of what we do is to serve the people of Rhode Island. That is one of our priorities. And at the Coastal Resources and Rhode Island Sea Grant, part of our job is to take all the really cool research that faculty are doing and integrate it into good decision making, all right? And again, and also to help build the next generation of workforce, whether for the Navy or for offshore renewable energy. And it's also to inspire people, our next generation of Rhode Islanders to recognize the value of the ocean state along our coasts and oceans. So one thing that we did a couple of years ago, we were asked by the state to define what is Rhode Island's blue economy. And I hadn't really thought about what the blue economy was. What does that mean? And so our team went out and we interviewed over 60 people from the blue economy sector and asked them, what is the blue economy? What do you do within the blue economy, and how can we make it better? And I'm not going to, you can read this document. We also have an executive summary, which is a lot shorter. But what we realized is, there is an economic value to the blue economy, but also I think what was really interesting is according to some information, 6 to 9% of Rhode Islanders are part of the blue economy. And that may not seem like a lot, but if you look at Massachusetts and Connecticut, or even Texas and California, only 3% of their population is connected to the blue economy or works in the blue economy. So it's really quite large here. So we did that, and so now we keep being talked about. We're being asked to talk about the blue economy. So what we do is, again, we've played a leadership role in the ocean, in the development of the Ocean SAM, which was, again, the process that identified where the nation's first offshore wind farm is. We also work on issues related to coastal resilience and aquaculture. So again, the idea is to provide a service to the people of Rhode Island.
Excellent, thank you. Do you mind if I ask you a question before we move on? I think you said 6% of Rhode Islanders work in the industry.
Yes.
So, but I think another thing I got from your report was that so many more than that are connected to the blue economy in other ways, whether they're eating the shellfish at the restaurant, or there's still, we're all so interconnected and affected by it. And so what I was inspired, one of the many things that stood out to me was the need for us all to be more aware of how we are connected. Therefore, we appreciate it and we're more engaged in it.
Well, one of your residents, Senator Whitehouse, said, he says that we have a lot of stars in Rhode Island within the blue economy sector. What we need to do is create a constellation. And so that's another role that URI plays. And just to define, when we talked with those 60 people, basically we have a different definition. If you look at, what how California describes the blue economy, to Norway, to the United Nations, there's all these different definitions. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's the industries, the obvious industries that you would think of: marine trades, defense, tourism and recreation. But it's also environmental organizations like Save the Bay, Friends of the Waterfront, for example. And it's also our government entities. We have some amazing government entities and research institutions that are really working, again, on workforce, on planning our coasts and oceans so that we have a thriving blue economy.
Thank you. Okay, Ben, would you like to go next? Absolutely, whatever you're comfortable doing.
No.
If you'd like to take this one's very portable.
So we're getting used to doing in-person presentations, and that sort of thing came as a shock to me. I had to get dressed from the waist down. Anyway, my name's Ben Greenstein. I'm the Dean of the School of Social and Natural Sciences at Roger Williams University. And the School of Social and Natural Sciences is one half of the liberal arts college, the Feinstein College of Arts and Sciences. And so we have the liberal arts basically represented across both of the schools. There are 7 departments in mine, and oddly, they're in the social and natural sciences. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the educational aspect of the blue economy, and it's a little bit of a different conversation than you've had if I had looked at the titles of the previous week's convenings that you've had. And I'd like you to think for a minute. So Jen gave a nice introduction to aspects of the blue economy and how the definitions differ depending on what state you're in and what country you're in. But I think all of us would agree that there are a lot of sectors involved. It's sort of a complicated undertaking. And it may be impacted by disciplines you might not expect. If you think about, for example, the waterfront in Newport. Okay, so we talk about sea level rise associated with climate change, and that's a blue economy thing, and it's going to impact the restaurants. All right, so there's a business aspect. Well, how do we protect the restaurants? Well, there's an engineering aspect, right? Who gets to go to the restaurants? That's a socioeconomic aspect, right? Who sources the food to the restaurants? So that's an aquaculture business incubator aspect right there. Who keeps the food that's sourced to the restaurants healthy, right? So that you eat it, you don't get sick. There's another aspect of the blue economy. So it crosses a lot of disciplines. And I think that's the primary university role is to educate a cohort of students that can get their minds around complex problems, okay? And our only recourse for doing that is engage. There are 2 fundamental issues of importance in doing that. The first is to engage students in a combination of the liberal arts and professional preparation, right? And we have 6 schools at Roger Williams University. So in addition to the 2 schools that compose the liberal arts operation, we've got a law school, we've got a business school, we have an engineering school, we have an architecture school. We have a school for criminal justice. And this gets to the second sort of foundational role of the university, we have an operation, we have a campus in Providence that serves a demographic population that isn't your traditional college goer to a liberal arts college, right, to a private liberal arts college. Why is this foundational? Because you can't solve complex problems unless you're able to work with diverse groups of people. Diverse groups of people are better at solving complex problems. There's data on this, right? It's clear, number 1. Number 2, we ignore a demographic of students and potential college goers that do not look like the typical 18 to 22-year-old college goer at our national peril. We don't have a demographic that's going to be static any longer. The demographic's changing, particularly in the Northeast. So a second role of the university not just to get students into the door, but to get them through the university and out the door. And all of them are vested in working with people that have come from different backgrounds, don't look like them, and don't think like them, because they're better at solving problems. Okay, so that's another very important role. And one of the reasons I came to Roger Williams is that we're particularly good at that. And the establishment of that Providence campus is testimony to that. And Donald Farish, the previous president, who passed away, unfortunately, a couple of years ago, was instrumental in setting that up. Okay, so I think that's important. The other thing that the university instills in students, obviously, is discipline-specific knowledge. So we have an engineering student who knows something about building some kind of seawall. Good for them, right? We have an architecture student who's interested in historic preservation. That's kind of important down here in Newport, right? So we have students that will be vested in have that specific discipline knowledge. At the same time, what we do with our students at Roger Williams is to engage them in the community. It's a mission-specific aspect of the university is to engage society, to better society, engage teaching and learning. So we have a community partnership center that engages students in blue economic and environmental justice, research, internships. They basically connect what they're learning to doing. And that's a really important component, and I think something that the university has to offer that's really important as a factor in the blue economy. Okay. The other aspect of what we do with our students is the experiential education. So in addition to going out and doing community-based work, we also have a lot of undergraduate research going on, both in the sciences and across the liberal arts. And the sciences focused on Narragansett Bay. We have a very strong marine science program, aquaculture program, as a result. And so the students literally get their feet wet doing that sort of thing. And so while they're doing that, they're learning not only about their discipline, but they're learning how to solve problems and think critically and write and speak. And these are the skills that are devoutly wished for by employers and managers in the blue economy. And so the role of the university, there's a multifaceted role. And maybe you'll ask me some questions. I can give you some specific examples, but I think that's enough right now. This is his introduction. Okay?
Following Ben is always a pleasure and a little, nerve-wracking. He's very engaging. So thank you, Molly, for inviting us and for inviting me to be on this panel. My name is Julia Wyman. I'm the director of the Marine Affairs Institute at Roger Williams University School of Law. But I'm also the director of the Rhode Island Sea Grant Legal Program. So I actually get the pleasure of working with both of these wonderful people on a very regular basis because our institute is a partnership of the law school, the University of Rhode Island, and Rhode Island Sea Grant. So when Molly invited us to come be a part of this panel, she said, we're going to have this talk on the blue economy and education and research. And my first question was, well, who is the audience? And she said it was open to the public. And that we should assume that folks coming to the talk may not know anything about the blue economy. So with that in mind, I sort of looked up, if I were just someone coming from a beautiful beach day, and thank you all for joining us on a very competitive day in Newport for your attention, what would I find if I Googled blue economy? And I came up with the blue economy is sustainable use of our ocean and coastal resources for economic growth, improved livelihoods and jobs, and healthy ocean and coastal ecosystems. And I think that's fairly accurate, but it really struck me as the way that it's being put out into the world right now is this new concept, right? Like everybody's talking about the blue economy, and the blue economy is this new initiative. And it's really not. It's really a rebranding of lots of work that all of us, and I see familiar faces in the audience, so I know that this is not just just folks from the public, although I hope that there are some folks just from the public. But it's a lot of the work that we've all been doing for years related to a sustainable ocean and coastal health, right? Environment and health for our people. So I'm going to talk specifically about the role of Roger Williams University School of Law, of law students, and of lawyers in the role of the blue economy. So Ben, really talked about what Roger Williams does and its engagement with the community, and we certainly carry that over in the law school. Jen talked about the role of Sea Grant and working with our ocean and coastal constituents throughout the state of Rhode Island. We do that with the legal program as well. But I specifically want to talk about what can law students do, and what are the opportunities for potential folks that are interested in the legal and policy aspects of the blue economy. So just a couple highlights of, if you're not that familiar with Roger Williams University School of Law, we are the only law school in Rhode Island, so we get a captive audience. It's really great for us. But we're also one of the only schools in the country that specializes in marine affairs. So if you're looking to do ocean and coastal work as an attorney, there's about 5 schools you're going to be considering nationwide, and you guys have one of them right in your backyard in Bristol. And we also have a Providence campus as well. And we offer extensive courses in sort of both aspects of marine affairs. And so I like to think of it as maritime and admiralty courses, so think about things like shipping, and then the natural resources courses, so things like climate change law and policy and environmental law. We do have a joint degree program, which I think really speaks to the heart of what Ben is talking about creating holistic thinkers that really look at a lot of these issues from all different aspects. And our joint degree program is a JD at the law school and then a Master of Marine Affairs over at the University of Rhode Island. So you've got that public-private partnership, and you've got students who are taking courses in the law and policy at Roger Williams, and then courses in things like economics, social science over at URI. And when they walk away from that degree, they're really capable of looking at some of the issues that are really facing us and our ocean world in a very holistic manner. And then we also have our partnership with Sea Grant. And so our role as agents of Sea Grant is to really take some of the questions that our constituents and coastal and ocean constituents in the state of Rhode Island is everybody. We are the ocean state. So any questions that you have related to the resources in the coastal state, our job is to take those law and policy questions and to try to come up with answers and solutions for you guys. So what kind of issues do come up with the blue economy and the law and policy aspect? So maritime transport, you guys are probably familiar with the statistic that over 80% of our international goods are shipped through our oceans. So how do we manage those transactions? What happens if there's an incident at sea with one of our ships? What happens if new channels open for travel, and how does that affect interstate commerce? How does that affect commerce throughout the world? Those are the types of questions that our students are working on. Fisheries, as we continue to utilize our wild fisheries, are regulations ensuring that we're actually maximizing what we can get out of the ocean while continuing to sustain maximum sustainable yield or the healthy populations of our fish, while also making sure that we're providing a good food source for our country. Aquaculture. So aquaculture is a really big issue for us at Rhode Island Sea Grant right now and at the law school. As we start to expand aquaculture, what about those competing uses? What happens when someone is opposing aquaculture in their backyard and they think that it's going to compete with some of the existing uses of the ocean right now? How do we make sure that we're making use of our oceans for everybody, and so that all users have the ability to maximize the use? And then renewable energy. So Jen mentioned the Ocean SAMP, which for those of you who aren't familiar with the Coastal Zone Management Program, that's a special area management plan. So that's when you take the coastal zone management plan and you look at a specific area and a specific issue. And she talked about the Ocean SAMP, so essentially mapping the oceans for renewable energy. How do we start to map out those new uses, and how do we look at the different uses that are overlapping, and how do you find the best places to site offshore wind turbines and other renewable energy sources? So what we really do is we try to engage our students in looking at all of these issues from many different aspects. And I think that there's also 2 aspects to being a law student and to being a lawyer with the blue economy. So you potentially have the students that are going to be more interested in the maritime and in the environmental aspects of it, and are really going to relish working on those environmental issues. And then you also have the students who are going to be really good business and corporate lawyers who are going to help with things like contracts and figuring out how a new business, how a new blue business is going to run. And so we're preparing students in sort of all aspects of the blue economy like that. And, just to reiterate what Ben said, we really do at Roger Williams envision a future world where everyone's going to have to work really collaboratively, and we're going to have to look at these issues from all different sides. And I think that climate change is a perfect example of that, right? It's going to be a cross-section of so many different issues, and it's going to require people thinking from a business perspective, people thinking from a legal perspective, people thinking from an engineering perspective, scientists, social scientists. It's all different types of thinkers working in collaboration. And so I like to think the blue economy is us putting all of those pieces together and seeing how they fit to make a more harmonious plan moving forward for our world.
Wonderful, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and ask a few additional questions to our panel, and then we'll open it up to the audience. But I just want to remind those of you who came in late that we have restrooms out in the hall. We have drinks in the back. Please help yourself. Drinks, snacks, cold beers out there. And think of any questions you might have. So I would love to tackle the issue that you brought up, actually, Julie, which was that the blue economy has always been here, and that this is more of a rebranding. I think we can all get that. I mean, there's always been fishing. There's always been. I certainly understand that. I look at that as this is a great opportunity. I mean, the rebranding is not a bad thing. It's a wonderful thing because it's new energy, and I think that a lot more people are getting excited about it. Do you agree with that? That it's an exciting opportunity, and what should we do with that opportunity?
Absolutely, 100%. And I don't mean to say that we shouldn't have that energy that we have. I think it's fantastic that we have the rebranding. And I think that it's taking that energy and moving it forward. And it's, to me, I see it as putting a lot of pieces that have been working potentially in silos and bringing them together. And I see the blue economy more as solidifying that togetherness. And that is something that we haven't necessarily always had the energy to get behind. So that's the role that I see in sort of the rebranding.
Great. And that's certainly been my observation too, is that people wanting to work together in the different sectors. So thank you. I'd love to hear all of your opinions on just how, let's say a student comes into your university as a freshman, so we're not talking about graduate, if they're interested in pursuing, an education related to the blue economy, what are their options? Are there, you talk about that there's so many different angles of it, whether they want law or be a scientist or, there are different aspects, but how do they even navigate, what possibilities there are in regards to coursework, but also careers? Jen, could you take that first?
Sure. So as a freshman, so I have a daughter who's a senior, okay, and she is studying business, supply chain management. She could work in the blue economy. She wants to work in the defense industry, potentially, because she wants to stay in Rhode Island. So my feeling is sort of what Ben said, part of it's passion and what you're committed to doing. A fabulous writer could engage in the blue economy. One thing about, again, the blue economy is we have a strong marine trades industry here. So someone could get their degree in marine affairs. They could also get their 100-ton license as a captain and work in the blue economy. And a lot of those entities are also, they can work in the traditional blue economy, but they could also work in, again, the expanding blue economy, for example, offshore renewable energy, where there's going to be thousands of jobs, whether it be for captains or for scientists. Inspire Environmental hires a lot of our graduates. So I think anyone can be a part of, or if they want to be a social worker or a community planner in a community and help work on issues related to coastal resilience. So I don't, we did an assessment once. We had a 2-day event where we asked our stakeholders, how should the University of Rhode Island provide a service to the state related to offshore wind? Should we do a master's in offshore renewable energy? And the answer was no. What we need are students that have ocean engineering or that are good oceanographers. It's an interdisciplinary approach, and we need them all. So we're toying with the idea. We have a URI Energy Fellows program, which is really outstanding, and they provide. These are seniors, not freshmen. Freshmen, I think, need to just figure out how to be at the university, to be quite honest. But the URI Energy Fellows are for juniors and seniors and graduate students, and the idea is to work in a business in the energy world and also learn the soft skills. So how to network, how to write a resume, how to interview, all of those sort of skills and different aspects of it. And what we're trying to do is saying, let's do a blue economy fellowship, to expand it to other entities. But then you also have Synedia, all right? You have programs that are already, and I'm sure they're doing this at Roger Williams University and other colleges. They're providing opportunities for these students to work within their system. So as a freshman, I would say, follow your passion, do what really interests you, but as a senior, and junior, get an internship and just try a bunch of stuff. And again, if you're in Rhode Island, you have a very good chance of working in the blue economy, whether as an environmentalist, as an engineer, as an oceanographer, as a writer.
Or as a tradesman. So
As a tradesman.
yeah. So whether they go to college or not, or go to graduate school or not, there's many opportunities.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you. Did you all want to add anything to that? That was a very thorough response, Jen.
Sorry.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
I'm thinking about my daughter.
So our first students come, about a third of the first students who come to Roger Williams declare undecided as maybe. I think best.
Yeah.
And then the rest declare a major or something. And so students often, a lot of them do campus, they take it. We have a marine lab at Roger Williams High School, Center for Environmental Development, and we run an aquaculture program out there, and marine ornamental fishing there, and they've been on tour and they've seen the fish, so they're going to be around. So major. And so I think two things. First of all, we're good size university. All in about 5,000, 5,500 students, but we're small enough to take the academic advising next level. And one thing I say to students and their parents is that nationally 75% of students change their grade when they come to college. So it's okay. If you want to see the fish, you want to biology, land themselves up in a college course. That's pretty good too. So they get exposure, and I think that's probably the most important thing initially, is they get exposed to a variety of different disciplines. The sophistication to figure out how those fit together into a blue economic, if you will, framework comes with advisement and little CVs, in terms of sort of figuring out where there's going to sort of land. And I think the other thing that's really interesting is that if the students pursue an independent project or an internship or something like that, it doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter. Right? If you then talk to them, as Jen mentioned about resume, leveraging their experience in the job, if you point out to them some of these, as Jen referred to, soft skills, if you say to them, could you leverage your experience? Again, it doesn't matter what, it doesn't matter. Could you leverage your experience you had to do X in the job to talk about how you could apply, you ran into something and it didn't work out. Can you see leveraging experience? And they get it. Right. So it's extremely powerful. So I think that's really important. The final thing I'll say is that in addition to a major, person has to satisfy genetic requirements, one of which we call core concentration, just 5 classes in discipline other than their major. So that gives them some exploration, some depth of exploration. And anybody in a professional school has to do a little arts. So marketing major, So I think that's another avenue that students can explore and sort of make fit the disease.
And I'll just add on to that. I think that we get a lot of our students, once they've come through your departments, both of you, and have decided science is not for them. And so they say, well, I'm interested in marine biology, but maybe not organic chemistry. So they come and they do law and policy with us. And I think it's just as important for students to learn what they don't like as what they do like. And talks like this, and at both universities we often have speakers, and there's a lot of really great opportunities in the state of Rhode Island to go to public talks. I think pushing students to attend those and to listen to them are really great opportunities for students to learn about the blue economy.
Great. My last question, and then we'll turn it to the audience, is the community. So how can people in the communities get involved with what you're doing at the universities? Are there opportunities?
I have. So first of all, we're having a Science Saturday on September 18th. So you should come to the Bay campus and take a tour on our research vessel, or talk to some of our ocean engineers or scientists, and everybody loves it. And actually, we didn't do it last year, but the past times it rained every single time. But there was just so many people there, like touching things and bones of marine mammals, and it was just really a fabulous opportunity to really get exposed to that. Our Sea Grant hat and our Coastal Resources Center. Right now I should be at a meeting with a bunch of aquaculture growers because we're trying to figure out what is the future of aquaculture in Narragansett Bay. And so we constantly are having public meetings where sometimes we even feed you. We're not allowed to bring beer, but we do have really good pizza over there. And the idea is to bring science to the table and best management practices so that people can be more informed. So currently, my colleague Pam Rubinoff she's doing a citizens monitoring initiative, and Aquidneck Island is the case study. So we're working actually right now with Common Fence Point too on making that community more resilient, and there's a community group. We're also working with Newport and the Navy on issues related to resiliency, and that has a public aspect to it as well. So we're still clunking along with Zoom right now. It's sort of a different animal now, but I know Roger Williams as well does too. An amazing opportunity to inform the people of Rhode Island to build strong and diverse stewards, so that we can sort of care for our natural resources and our economy.
Do you want to start, or should I? Okay, so I'll start with what we do at the law school. So we do a lot of work with the community at the law school, and I'll talk about two specifically that are related to blue economy. So if you are working with an organization and you have a question of marine law or policy that you don't know the answer to, so for example, let's say you have a business and you are seeing regular sunny day flooding in front of your business, and you're curious as to what's going to happen as we see more sunny day flooding moving forward, and whether that's going to impact folks coming to your business, and whose role is it to fix the road? How do you get to your business? Those are questions that we often handle through our Sea Grant Law Fellow program. So feel free to reach out to me if you'd like to talk about that. We don't work with individuals on that. So while we are lawyers, we're not your lawyer. We don't do advocacy and we don't do representation. So if you have a question of aquaculture and aquaculture siting, if it's directly related to your property and a specific incident, we're not going to probably take that on. But if it's generally related to aquaculture in Narragansett Bay, that's the type of question that we would look at. And then the other thing that's really applicable to the blue economy is we have a business startup clinic. And so our business startup clinic works with students to work with organizations that are just getting started. So if you do have a business that's related to the blue economy and you're looking at things like how do we get incorporated, those are the types of questions that we handle through our business startup clinic. And feel free to reach out to me to get the contact for that as well.
We do this in sort of two broad categories. First is we have a cooperative extension service through our shellfish catcher. Right, so we provide oyster seed, oyster growers within Narragansett Bay. On the scale of the do the spawning. They grow the algae, grow the larvae. We do it from the ground up. And we actually offer classes to shellfish growers to come. And it's not like a regular college class, it's a cooperative extension class. So come, they can learn about it. We have served all of you recently. Did you know Rhode Island has a state coral? Not even Florida has a state coral. They got a reef. We're the only state in the union that has fish state coral. And there's cold water corals out here. It's called Spanish Pacalot. Why am I telling this? Because it serves as a foundation for much of our outreach, largely to K-12 education by one of our societies. So the second category. Actually, before I go on to that, we have an engineer that was working in partner with our education department and is doing K-12 education, and she does this through offshore wind farms. So she's getting kids up to speed on how you generate electricity. That's as long as I'm on this topic, that's sort of a really interesting example of an intersection, right? An intersection between education folks and engineering folks that allows for an application towards the blue economy. And I mean, this whole building is dedicated to the intersection of startup companies to innovate. It's called Innovate. It's the name of the place, right? Well, if you think about what we're doing, it's at the intersection of academic disciplines is also where innovation happens, right? We're not creating startups, right? We're creating people that are going to figure out that stuff, right? And so the intersection of engineering and education, right? Or philosophy and engineering, right? That sort of thing is uniquely Protestant, academic, innovative academia. So the other way we engage is through we have a regular partner, the Center for Community Partnership Center. And there are classes that actually go out and solve problems for organizations in the community. And so we have public health classes, public health policy. We go out into the community and investigate where the food deserts are, the nutrient deserts, right? So this is a food security environmental justice application that's done to solve a problem for a community partner. And the center makes these linkages between classes and faculty and the community. We have one terrific sociologist who's teaching classes. And then he bought his students' bus pass. And they rode them around 60 buses. What they do was figuring out where the buses are in relation to grocery stores, health care, that sort of thing. So it's another, and then could report back on where the bottlenecks are for people who depend on buses. That's another way.
That sounds like incredible education. I love it. Yeah, that's really cool. All right, well, I'd love to open it up to audience members if you have any questions. Brian?
I'm Brian with Rhode Island Marine Trade Association, and having the panelists this week from academia, my question is why? And so why the sudden interest in defining the blue economy, or as you said, rebranding what already has existed, or knocking down the silos, or creating a constellation? So why all of a sudden the sudden interest in the word blue economy, and how much of that is related to the new participants such as offshore wind or aquaculture?
I mean, I'll start with my perspective on it. It's the energy coming from sort of the younger folks, right? And coming from those emerging businesses and emerging, sort of the emerging term blue economy. And that's sort of academia in a nutshell, right? We always respond to the way that the world is moving forward. And so at least from the Roger Williams perspective, we're interested in working with folks that are interested in the blue economy because we have been working on a lot of these issues for many, many years. And so the energy and enthusiasm that's coming up from sort of the younger folks and from offshore wind energy and other businesses, that's just exciting.
Sure. So I just think it's the new buzzword, right? So if you and I think, so why not take advantage of it? And I think it also, and I think you're on a grant with JP on the Blue Economy Convergence Accelerator. So even National Science Foundation is really pushing this interdisciplinary approach. And so if you really look at what blue economy is and what acceleration and interdisciplinary, we, as Julia mentioned, we've been doing, if you read what it is like, well, we've been doing this all along. And so has Rhode Island Trades Association. You guys are a leader and you're the glue to you, and other trade organizations are the glue to our blue economy. I mean, and you see the bigger picture. You know, I remember when I talked to Wendy Mackey about what happened during the recession and how, you know, marine trades and the boat industry was failing because that's the first thing that goes. And RIMTA basically made a few phone calls, and I'm simplifying this, and was able to bolster this marine trades industry, as well as diversify the capacity of the workforce within the marine trades agencies. So when 2 years ago, when we were asked to write this report about the blue economy, I was like, why? You know, why? We're already doing it. We already, but it's sort of an opportunity, again, to minimize the silos, to work together, and to, again, move towards this whole new industry. And I'm saying new because Rhode Island was the birthplace of innovation, right? With the Industrial Revolution. It's, you know, with the innovations and getting the researchers to work more closely with the private sector to solve societal issues. So I think that's why. It's an opportunity. And it's the next buzzword. It was sort of like we started with ecosystem-based management, right? Then we start with integrated resources management, and now we're talking about marine spatial planning and SAMPS. It's just sort of the next word reinventing itself. My opinion. I don't know.
Institutions of higher education are rarely murdered. They commit suicide by failing to do the work that society needs done. So said the president of Harvard University in 1910, which Nancy Speaks. And we've been doing that since the 12th century. Liberal education is back that far. And we're not teaching trivium by rivium. You don't come to college or geometry. You don't learn just geometry and philosophy and Latin, right? And so education in itself all the time. So that's the first answer to your question. The second answer is, I'm not is it sudden? Like I said in my opening remarks, the liberal education, professional programs, and the experiential learning that to me is the future of higher education. And reason it's the future is because it's essential, and it can be applied to all sorts of things. So it's not surprising to me if we look at, how can we serve society? That's what education is all about. And this is where we are right now. And we were doing this in Mount Vernon, Iowa, which is anywhere near the ocean. But there are a lot of farms there that put nutrients into the rivers that get carried out to Gulf of Mexico to create the dead zone.
Any other questions? Yes, dear.
Judith Leonard from Blue Institute for Blue Institute Labs. Just further to a conversation earlier today. So at the university level, what skill set or knowledge or what do you see missing from kind of like the average student coming in? How could the K through 12 better prep Would it be something more like experiential learning, for example, or I don't know, something that's manageable for a public school system? Something that a goal that's relatively achievable.
I'll start because I have a very strong opinion on this. Writing. I would like our students to come in better writers. And I feel like we've done them a disservice in this country in K through 12, where we've moved a lot more towards tests and like multiple choice tests. And so we get, even at the law school level, we'll get students that aren't well versed in like the 5-paragraph essay, which is something that, you know, I could write in my sleep in 5th grade, right? That was something that we really had to work on. So I think the ability to communicate in writing clear and concisely is the number one thing I would want K through 12 to focus on.
Not texting?
No.
And would you want them to, and go with me here, because I'm a
Sure.
little older, would you want them to be able to do that by hand as well as on a computer? Do you think it matters? I'm curious.
I'd be interested in hearing what the social scientists think about that. Personally, I still write by hand. It makes me remember better, but
But not super young, not that you're older, but
I don't think I'm young.
what I mean is you did not go through elementary school with the computer, I'm guessing. Maybe
I did not. You're right. So the computer came later, so I did have to do handwriting when I was in elementary school and middle school. I think that social scientists probably have a lot to say on that. I think there are some studies that show you do retain a little bit better by handwriting, but I do know that at least at the law school, we allow computers, even in the classroom, they type their notes. But the ability to write clearly and concisely, I'd love to see that.
So just for the record, I went to elementary school with computers. And there were computers in classrooms when I was in elementary school. So I'm a scientist, right, so I'll say math. But I think there's a more foundational answer to the question. Yes. And I asked the same question to Senator Whitehouse Saturday night. Down over their building. And it had to do with coming out of but the same, I think, applies to kids coming out of K-12. And he said they need to be more sophisticated in their consumption of media. And he's right, because that's where the questions and the parsing of data and understanding come from. And his examples were thus. In this, before the Cocoa River caught fire, I'm young enough not to remember that, pollution was okay. And then Nixon established the EPA, and then he said, and this is, I'm quoting the Senate now, he said, I was raising people with family, and our diet was terrible. Nobody knew about it. But now we do. Right? People are living long, right? Basically, what he argued was we need the same sort of sea change when it comes to consuming information, because it's, as we know now, it's critical and it's everywhere.
So I think it's innovation and creativity. And, you know, when I was young, you know, you would say, you know, I wonder what this means. And we'd all sit around and go, well, I think it means this, and I think it means this. Now you just say, well, let me Google it, right? And so I think these wicked problems that we're having in the world, we need innovation and creativity and wonder. And I don't know if you could teach that, but I think we need to give our kids the chance to have a place to do those things.
Thank you all.
And I'm definitely not part of the panel. They're brilliant people, but I came from an education career and was a middle school teacher, so I'd love to just chime in. Because I totally agree with all this experiential learning, life skills, soft skills. I think that teachers need to be given the support to teach the soft skills and to hold kids accountable. I worked at a school in Baltimore where, I mean, every student that came in, I shook their hand and they had to look me in the eye and shake my hand and say good morning. I mean, that might sound ridiculous, but it was fantastic. And being connection you make when you do that. And you know, I mean, I'd walk, if a student didn't look at me in the eye and say hello in the hallway, I would call them out and just say, hi, I'm talking to you. You know, so to be able to stop and teach those soft skills and life skills, communication skills, but also within the classroom to celebrate failure and resiliency and the things that we want. We say we want these young adults to be able to problem solve and think critically and be creative and work together as a team and be able to be resilient after failure, but we don't give them the opportunity to practice that. So I think that teachers have the power to do that in every single class they have, but they also have to have the support from the decision makers to take the time to do that, because it takes time to seize those opportunities. That would just be my take on it as well. But it is possible. It just has to be a priority. Any other questions? Yes.
There's been a lot of conversation today about the private sector and the educational sector. What about the political, judicial side of things? I mean, the U.S., from my perspective, is very much in catch-up mode when it comes to blue economy. Watched it, Africa, watched the Europeans roll ahead, watching the Chinese move forward very, very quickly. We're operating where we have judicial levels at city, town, state, federal, certainly intersects when you're talking offshore. Are there reforms that may need to come about on the way that we do courts and evaluate legal issues and these balances as you're trying to create this more integrated approach to, quote, optimize this potential that is offshore or could exist inside Narragansett Bay? How do you go about better balancing and more effectively and more quickly striking a balance between these competing interests so it doesn't get drawn out to a 3-decade set of court battles?
How long do we have?
I guess the corollary is, you know, to what extent are the local council members, state reps, federal reps that you're talking with buying into this concept?
Yeah.
Is it real, or is it just, you know, more vaporware?
Yeah, so I'll start, and then I really think that Ben and Jen have a lot to add to this as well. So sort of two parts there, right? The political part and then the judicial part. And I think the judicial one is very complex, and as you point out, we've got many layers of the judiciary, and so we're looking sort of at different courts and how different courts are approaching some of these issues. And I think depending on those courts, there are some political influences that come into play in terms of, we've seen in the last 4 years, a lot of appointments of judges that have a particular standpoint, and if we don't see a swaying to maybe a more liberal court, we may see for the next 10, 20, 30 years decisions that are siding more with corporations potentially on some of these issues. So that's really complex. In terms of politics, I think we've got some really strong leaders that are supportive of the blue economy, and I think we're extremely fortunate to be in the state of Rhode Island, especially with Senator Sheldon Whitehouse and Senator Jack Reed, who are very supportive of the blue economy, and I think that they're pushing that on a national level, and so that's very good for us. In terms of and this, I think, is the heart of what's happening in Rhode Island right now. In terms of what's going on a local and state level, I think you're right. It really comes down to communities, cities, towns, and selectmen in those towns, town planners, how they're approaching things, how they're working on some of these issues. And I think, and Jen can speak to this because the Sea Grant Extension folks work quite closely with a lot of our planners. But they are thinking about issues related to the blue economy, and I think that that's pretty front and center on a lot of folks' minds in Rhode Island. And Jen, do you want to?
Well, I kind of want to answer it in a different way.
Okay.
You know, the other thing is the competition between, you know, so have you all heard of smart growth on land, you know, where you're trying to create these synergistic relationships between uses so that, and so we don't do that in the water, really. Okay, you permit a wind turbine, you permit something else over here. It's sort of like the way it used to be. I mean, it still is on land, but you know, but you understand. So in Europe, for example, we're on a project looking at, they call it multi-use. And in the Netherlands, for example, or in Belgium, the federal government requires that there be synergistic relationships between ocean and coastal uses. For example, in lease blocks or wind farm lease blocks in the Netherlands, they're required to have areas, they're called passport areas, where aquaculture could potentially be there. And that's required. When you're here in the United States, the federal government does, because I keep asking, you know, in these webinars where you can, do we allow multi-use? And they say yes. But what they're saying is, we're gonna lease wind turbines, we're gonna say wind turbines, and then we're gonna put like a navigational channel right between that. Or we're gonna pay off the fishermen. That's what they call multi-use. And so what we're trying to see is, could we learn from Europe and other places to encourage those synergistic relationships? I don't know if you know this, but on the Block Island Wind Farm, there's all these mussels being grown, you know, and they're being filtered by this really great fresh water, and but right now they're not being harvested, and it's not being encouraged. You get a permit to do turbines, you get a permit to do aquaculture, you get a permit to fish, and it's not that synergistic relationships. And I know this is ideal, and I know this is, but we have to start talking about it for it to happen. Remember when smart growth was an imagination, you know, we're not going to do that. And look at, you guys are doing it all over the place in Newport. I'm not, maybe not everywhere, but in certain places. And so we need to think about that model. Again, it's not the same. It's different, it's hard, but we have to think about it in that way to, you know, again, President Biden wants, you know, 30 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2030. Right now, we're expected to see 2,000 wind turbines off of our coast, the Atlantic coastline, by 2030. That's not even 30 gigawatts. What do we do with everyone else that wants to use the water? Do we just, I mean, we need wind farms, we need decarbonization, but what do we just do? Just throw everybody else away? You know, so we need to start thinking about blue economy. What are the synergies? What are the opportunities to help each other and move it forward in that way? So I'm answering it in a very different way, but I think that's one of my soapbox comments that I would like to say.
I'm going to answer it
In a way.
and I know I'm going to speak for a little bit. I'm a geologist by training, so I know something about geology, and I know something about climate change, geological processes. Climate change is fast, drastically, sometimes rapidly. One of the issues I think that we face politically, I think it's going to be ameliorated a little bit as this climate change affects indicators we have seen. That is, there's a fundamental disconnect between human timescales and geological timescales. Timescales on which things like climate change operate. So politicians like 2 years, 4 years, 6 years. But there's a disconnect right there between that timescale and how long some of those changes influence their constituents, right? So it's not politically expedient. It's nobody's fault. It's just it's a recognition that there's obviously two different scales of time. And so it's very difficult. I mean, there are a lot of layers to this, but I'll just leave it there. I'll tell you one story. I wrote a chapter for the risk assessment basis, Great Barrier Reef, vulnerability assessment, Great Barrier Reef climate change. And to paraphrase it, reefs have been around for 2 billion years. It wasn't before. All sorts of things built reefs in geological past. And they got knocked down in massive systems in geological past. exchange, PlayStation came and went, still went up and down, 100 meters. And the return times on systems was anywhere from 4 to 100 million years. Nobody wants to see that.
Well, thank you. Our time is up. We're a little bit over. I apologize. Thank you, Julia, Ben, Jen, for being here today as our panelists. You've given us a lot to think about. It certainly helped to identify the challenges as well as the opportunities, and helped us identify the blue economy and what's going on.